In an interview with journalist Jorge Ramos, Jared Taylor, founder and editor of the American Renaissance, belittled the famous phrase from the U.S. Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, and said that it is not true by any stretch of the imagination. As young college students, it is important for us to understand current political topics so that we may in the future become better informed voters. In this speech, I will teach you about the most important things to know about white nationalism. My speech will focus on three main ideas. The first being what white nationalism is. Secondly, who the people involved in this movement are. And finally, how this movement relates to current events of the United States. So we will begin by defining what white nationalism is. White nationalism can be defined by or characterized by three main features. In one of his papers, Stephen L. Gardner, cultural anthropologist with a PhD from Cornell University, stated that the first feature would be their core belief in a genetically inherited, biologically determined race-linked differences in intelligence, criminality, self-control, and creative initiative. What this is saying is that white nationalists believe that, for the most part, racial minorities are generally less intelligent than whites. They also believe that a majority of the criminals in the United States also tend to be minorities. They also have a nationalist orientation for their politics, arguing per point one for a biological notion that delimits the national essence, which is considered the only proper basis for an authentic national identity. It is in some sense a new phenomenon, albeit with roots in racist organizations past, qualitatively different from racist organizations such as white supremacy and white nativism. So now that we know what white nationalism is, we can go on and talk about who the people involved in this movement are. When we talk about white nationalism, there are a handful of names that we recognize due because of their political influence or published works. There are people like William Harris, Matthew Pierce, Don Black, David Duke, and Jared Taylor. When we talk about white nationalism, we can include groups of old neo-Nazi styled supremacy, but within the movement we must also separate the groups depending on their stances on biological determinism and their political views. For instance, there are four sectors that we could categorize all these different groups. For example, in Sector A, we can put groups like the American Renaissance, who believe that, who justify their political ideas based on race. But they advance their politics through legal manners. Then we also have groups who fall under Sector B, which would include groups like the KKK, who also base their ideas on race. However, they use more violent or illegal ways to go about spreading their ideas. Then in Sector C, we also have groups that are similar to those in Sector A, but they don't base their ideas on race. So now that we've talked about who the people in this movement are, we can go on and talk about how this movement relates to current events in the United States. In the last few years, we've noticed how an increase in white nationalism has affected our country. We also saw its influence in our most recent presidential election. The way Donald Trump, or President Trump, ran his campaign appealed to many white nationalists. Policies on immigration and proposed projects like the construction of a wall was one of the main reasons he was attracting so many white nationalists. According to the United States Census Bureau, the population as it stood in 2015 was comprised of about 61% white Americans, non-Hispanic, or Latino. And it's important to note this statistic because many white nationalists believe that their race is under fire by immigration or an increase in racial minorities in the United States. Many white nationalists have also begun spreading an idea of a white genocide. And this is a terrible misuse of the term genocide because it implies that many white Americans are being systematically killed, and that is not true. So now that we know how the people involved with white nationalism, we can go on and talk about how this relates to current events in the United States. So in one of her books, Carol M. Swain talked about how an increase in frustration due to unresolved public policy issues was a main reason why many white nationalist groups were gaining many more followers. She also talked about how this increase in their followers was indication that maybe in the future many hate crimes were also going to start spreading across the country. So now that we've talked about how this movement relates to current events in the United States, we can conclude. And in this speech, I taught you about how this movement, or what white nationalism is. I began with teaching you how, or what white nationalism is, and secondly, who the people involved with this movement are and how this event relates to current events in the United States. The purpose of the speech was to better inform you about the movement, or the white nationalist movement, and to understand what people like Jared Taylor mean when they say that not all men are created equal.